Alright, welcome to Intro to C Programming. Today we are going to write an algorithm for finding the factorial of a number. We're going to write it both iteratively and recursively, and then we're going to write a recursive program exclusively for printing 5 characters entered by a user in reverse order. Okay, so go ahead and open up Visual Studio, and we'll create a new project. I'll call it Recursion. And then I will name my file recursion.cpp. Make sure you select the Win32 console application. Under application settings, make sure that you check the box for empty project. In your project or your solution explorer, make sure you add a new item now. And this is going to be a CPP file, and I'm going to name it recursion.cpp. There we go. Okay, if I want to do any kind of input or output in C, I have to have the standard io.h library included in my code, and my function, which is the entry point to my program, is the main function, takes no parameters and returns nothing. So it's going to be a void main, takes no parameters, and then have the open curly brace followed by the close curly brace. Okay, so we are going to write the factorial program both recursively and iteratively. The way that factorial works is that we know that n factorial is equal to n times n minus 1 factorial. This makes it a candidate for recursion. We can also write it iteratively though. So we're going to write 2 functions up here. One of them is going to be the iterative, and one of them will be the recursive version of it. So I'll have each of them return an int to me. The first one we'll call factorial recursive and have it take in a number. And then we will also have the factorial iterative, and it will also take the number in. Let's start off with the iterative one. I'm assuming that most of you are a little bit more familiar with loops than you are with recursion right now. So let's write the iterative one to start. So to write the iterative one, we are just going to loop, starting at num, going down to 1, and subtracting each time we go through there. And we need to create one other variable here, which is going to be my factorial. Let's set it equal to a 1 to start, and we'll say fact times equal I. And then that is the number that we're going to return. So there's the iterative version of the factorial. The recursive version now, what we say here is that we know what our stop condition is going to be. Our stop condition is going to be if num is equal to 0 or 1, because we know that 0 factorial and 1 factorial are both equal to 1. So we say if num equals 0 or num equals 1, then we're just going to return a 1, and that's because we know that this is what the factorial of 0 and 1 is. Now, on the other hand, if it's not a 0 or a 1, and of course we need to maybe put a little precondition here, precondition that num is greater than or equal to 0. In this case here, we have the same precondition, num is greater than or equal to 0. If for some reason a negative number is passed in here, it's going to cause our program probably to loop indefinitely. So we just need to be careful of that. We could put a little if statement in there to check it just to make sure and print out an error message. That wouldn't be that difficult to do. But in my case, I'm just going to put a little comment so the programmers understand that this is what the value of num is going to be defined as, and this is what it's going to work as. Okay, so now there's only one more line of code that I need to have in my recursive factorial, which is so I now have my base cases, which is 0 factorial and 1 factorial. So assuming that I have a positive number, I know that the factorial is going to be num times, and then I'm just going to call factorial recursive with num minus 1 passed into it. And that's going to give me my answer. So we can come down here, we can check this out. We'll do a value here, and then we'll do one more. I'll name this one fact also. And let's go ahead and prompt the user. Enter the number to find the factorial of. Read it into value. And now we're going to say fact equals factorial recursive of value. And then we'll print out, let's see, we'll do something special here. We'll say %d exclamation mark equals %d new line. And we'll pass in value followed by fact. Now, just so that we make sure that we get the correct answer, I'm going to reset the value of fact to be 0. This is not necessary. This is just so that we know that we've reset that value before we have set the value equal to the factorial iterative. And we'll pass in our value. And we're going to do the same thing that we just did here and print that out so that we can see the difference between the recursive output and the iterative output. They should, of course, be the same. But let's just do it this way so that we make sure that we get the same answer for each one of them. Okay, run the program, and let's say factorial 5. 5 factorial is 120, 5 factorial is 120, so both using recursion and using iteration we get the same answer, which is 120. 5 times 4 is 20, times 3 is 60, times 2 is 120, times 1 is 120. So that is the right answer. You can go ahead and try it with some other values. If you get too big, it's probably going to give you an overflow. The factorial gets large very, very quickly, and you might start to get larger than what can be held in an int, depending on the number that you choose. So just be careful of that as you're running this. But there we go. We have the recursive program and the iterative program, both working for factorial now. Okay. The next part of the program was to write a program to print 5 characters entered by a user in reverse order. So I'm just going to continue with what I'm doing here, and I'm going to just call another function here that we're going to call print characters, and I'm going to pass in a number here. In this case, I'm going to pass in a 4. We wanted to make sure that it was going to do this 5 times. So that's what that number 4 is going to be there. I'm going to call it print chars, and it's going to take an integer, which is going to represent how many characters do I want it to print out. Now, there's going to be 2 characters that I create here. CH is going to be the one that I read in from the user. So I'll say enter character. And then I'm going to read it in with my scanf into that variable CH. And then, if you remember, I'm going to read in the enter character, because if I'm reading characters, the enter character stays in the buffer, and I want to make sure that I get rid of that. So I'm going to take that enter character out of there. I'm not ever going to use it. I'm just going to take it out so that when the user hits a character and then hits enter, it's going to wipe that enter key out of the buffer for me. Now, to do this recursively, I need to have my stop condition. Well, my stop condition is going to be if num finally gets to be less than 0 or equal to 0 is when I'm going to stop recursing. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to decrement num each time I come through here and then pass it back in, so that I know that if I start num at 4, it's going to go 4, 3, 2, 1, and then the 0th time that it comes in, it's still going to prompt the user to enter the character, but it's not going to get inside of my if statement, so it's not going to make this recursive call. The only other thing I need to do down here at the bottom is print out my character. I'm going to put a new line there just so that it makes it a little pretty to print, and that should be it. So let's go ahead and run that. It builds. I'm running it now. Now we put that at the bottom of our factorial program, so we're still going to have to do our factorial. So there's the factorial. Now you see it says enter a character. I'll do A, B, C, D, E. There's my 5 characters, and something happened where it didn't print any of them back out for me here. So let's figure out what's going on, why I didn't get any of my characters printed back out. Okay, so the problem that we have here is that we have read in an integer right here, but then we hit enter after that, and we never read that character, that enter character out there. So what I want to do right here, I'm just going to create that enter character again, and right here I'm going to do the scanf on %c into that enter variable. And this should solve the problem. So what was happening up here is that our character was actually going into that enter variable instead of that ch variable. So reading that down there, because I had read in the number from the factorial. Okay, it looks like I just did a little too fast for Visual Studio here. And it's failing because it's saying that a file that I need to write to is not able to be written to for some reason. So it should, there we go, see, so now it's okay. It released the lock on whatever file that was. Okay, enter the number, so let's try another one. 6 gives me 720, which is correct. My character is A, B, C, D, E, and you see that there, it prints them out in the reverse order just using recursion, E, D, C, B, A. Okay, so that's it for this program. We did factorial, iteratively, and recursively, and then we also wrote a program to print 5 characters entered by the user in reverse order using recursion. And that was this print chars function that I wrote right here. If you have any questions, let me know. Good luck.